All right, back at it. Continuing from the ego to a quick example here. So if Naomi, let's say, if Naomi's id wants her to eat an entire plate of donuts, the ego might suggest a more moderate response, which specifically might satisfy the id, but not with kind of doing everything the id might want within kind of her mind, let's say. And so Naomi's response might be just to have one donut or half of one or whatever it might be. Again, satisfying the id, but within the constraints of society. It's societally acceptable to eat a plate of donuts, I would think not. So, okay, so then continue with Sigmund Freud's map of the mind here. We do need to talk about the last component, the last third of the mind, according to Sigmund Freud, which is the superego. And so what we need to realize is, according to Sigmund Freud, the superego is going to be the structure that is really going to take into account everything that kind of your society has as basic rules, structures of behavior, cultural values. And in large part, this is the thing that is going to tell you what to do and what not to do. A lot of times this is akin to the moral guide for a human. Feelings of guilt for doing bad will come from the superego, according to psychodynamic theorists like Freud. Feelings of pride for doing good does come from the superego as well, according to Sigmund Freud. So when trying to put this all together, another quick scenario and example, small child in the candy store, it is screaming for candy because, again, it is driven by that, not necessarily Thanatos or Eros in this situation, but it just wants what it wants now. It wants immediacy. There's no idea of delaying gratification for the id. Doesn't happen like that, right? The thing is, your conscience, which is part of your superego, is saying, it is wrong to steal candy. The ego is going to decide the best way to handle the dilemma is to go home and ask your mother for your allowance. Then you can go back and buy the candy, satisfying both the id and the superego in the same instance. So, poor example, but I'll have some other ones for you here in a second. So, when kind of putting these all together, we've all seen, if you remember, we've all seen something like it, the cartoon version of a dilemma for a character that is trying to decide what it does. There's a devil that will pop up on one shoulder and the angel that pops up on the other shoulder. And so that in large part is kind of Sigmund Freud's theory, although this all occurs within the mind. But Sigmund Freud's theory is that the devil that is on the shoulder usually deciding that you want to take what you want now and do the things that might feel good but aren't necessarily good for society or good for you. That's the id for sure. Again, the id being the thing that's driven by Eros and Thanatos specifically. Pleasure principle wants what it wants now. The superego being the angel is kind of societal. What is completely driven by what is societally acceptable. What is the thing that society would deem would be appropriate for the situation. And so how I look at it is the cartoon character, whether it's Wile E. Coyote, Bugs Bunny, whoever, the cartoon character themselves, the person in the middle, is the ego. That is the decider. That is the balancer. Now the ego, this guy right here, must have the opportunity to make sure that the id does get its jollies off in some way or shape or form. You can't completely suppress it. According to Sigmund Freud, that would cause problems within the mind. But it also has to make sure that the superego is listened to as well. And so the ego is constantly doing this game of balancing, of deciding, of making sure one can win, but the other is okay with that as well. That's in large part the desire of the ego. It is the balancer. It is the decider. So this is actually something that was drawn for me when I was teaching out in Iowa. After I had taught the lesson of the id, ego, and superego. A very talented artist in the classroom came back the next day and kind of drew this. The idea of being the ego, being the decider, the id, animalistic, wanting what it wants now, and then the superego kind of wanting to keep the individual to be kind of a saintly, if you will, but kind of no outbursts, nothing like that. So yeah, that is the id, ego, and superego. Now, one thing that I just want to touch base on in terms of how Sigmund Freud tried to track and figure out what the id and superego two components of the mind that aren't always available to your consciousness. But how you try to track those things is through something called free association. Hypnosis was something he did not utilize all that much. He instead liked to utilize free association quite a bit. And so that's where an individual would be in kind of the classic psycho-Freudian therapy session. Individual would be told to get comfortable. They would be told to let their mind become as comfortable as possible and to just respond to a series of words that might be read out with the first thing that pops into mind. So I'm sure you've seen something like this, but this is kind of classic Freudian theory. The idea is to kind of create a chain of thought based upon associations, and so kind of creating an association on a bunch of different things that go on. And so what the individual what might happen for the individual is that the idea that memories might be linked between things that are conscious and the unconscious as well. And so what would happen oftentimes is things that might pop up could be kind of telling to Sigmund Freud. And so for you, if you were to hear the word cold in this type of session, what would be the first thing that comes to mind? The word book, or the word ocean, or the word music, right? Those are all straightforward and pretty simple and straightforward and no issue, right? So with cold, you might think snow, or book, you might think of your favorite book, or music, or ocean, or whatever. The idea is to throw a string of words such as these quick enough and long enough that then there are some buzzwords or hot words, as Sigmund Freud might have called them, that are tossed in the mix. Something like mother. And so the idea would be that maybe as you're going through, you hear cold, you respond. You hear book, you respond. Music, you respond. Ocean, you respond. Mother, you respond with something maybe mean, like hate or anger or whatever else. You might not have even meant to say that, but Sigmund Freud would, using his little notebook, write that down and maybe come back to the relationship with the mother for the patient or whatever it might have been. So, yeah, that is free association. Pretty straightforward. What we'll be talking about tomorrow is the ego being a very, very fragile thing within all of us as a third part of our mind. We're going to talk tomorrow about how the ego actually seeks and consistently seeks to protect itself. And you're going to see now that you're just at home. I hope your parents parents or siblings don't hate me for this, but in large part, you're going to be able to kind of track what the ego tries to do for each of your family members as it tries to rationalize or project or sublimate some of the things that go on, because we are all constantly trying to protect our ego in various ways. So that is in large part kind of what we needed to talk about today. If I can get out of this and get back here. Just a quick review. Obviously, we talked about March Madness. Once again, March Madness material can be found if you go to ELearning 2020, or excuse me, to Schoology. Just go to the March Madness folder, which is going to be at the bottom of all my folders that are on here. Click this. It's your opportunity to go to that website, create your bracket. Again, the seeds will be on that document right here. We'll give a little synopsis of all these theorists. Should be a good, fun opportunity to, number one, create a bracket for March Madness. Number two, and more especially, to review the important psychologists that we need to cover. Today, then, we did take that first personality test, and hopefully that gave you a little bit of an indication as to who you are. We're going to look much more at things like that later. But then we talked about psychodynamic theory, Sigmund Freud especially, and his three components of the mind: id, ego, and superego. And of course, it is Sigmund Freud who would say that those components of you are going to be the things that are going to kind of create your personality. So, all right, with that taken care of, please stay safe, be smart with why you're leaving the house and what you're doing. Just stay safe. I hope these help, these videos help and can drive us forward. Hopefully creating some structure out of your day, a little bit of exercise where you can, but wash your hands. Crazy world we live in right now, so do what you can to keep yourself moving forward. All right, take care.